Okie dokie, Dogg for Mayor fans. Evan Benton here, and I am going to weigh in on the subject of guns and guns as they relate to the current whatever the heck is going on in the world, okay? And America specifically, of course, because America is one of three countries that lets you own guns without having to like register them or some kind of thing. You know, the law is complicated. Um, and I just want to say before I get into what I have to say, I am a proponent of the Second Amendment. I do think that it is everybody's duty to own a gun and be able to uh, defend themselves. It shouldn't be up to the government to defend you. That is not the role of a government. That is a terrible situation when you ask the government to, when you depend on the government for your self defense. That is a terrible relationship to have. And I don't just think we should be able to have shotguns and handguns. I think we should be able to have machine guns, fighter planes, tanks. I think that private citizens should be able to own nuclear weapons. And I realize that that's going to be a terribly goofy statement to a lot of people. But listen, if okay, the big argument that people make all the time, the libertarians make, is that if you don't allow people to maintain a private, you know, arsenal of, up to and including the same amount of force that a government per se is able to bring to bear against you, then your relationship with that government is based on force. Okay, and that is definitely true. That is definitely a true statement. Um, if the government is, if you are following the law because of an imbalance in force, then the law is not based on reason or logic. It is based on force. It is based on the unilateral ability of the government to oppress you, to imprison you, to kill you and your family, and on and on and on. That's definitely true. But the deeper philosophical argument, which I'm just going to touch on briefly here, is that if you don't believe that private citizens should be allowed to own nuclear weapons, then you principally believe that there ought to be two types of citizens in the world. You believe then that there are people who should be able to own nuclear weapons and people who should not be able to own nuclear weapons. And if you believe that, then law is null and void because law is based on the principle of the equality of individuals before the law. So I realize that's kind of big head kind of a thing, but just think about that, okay? If you're not allowing private citizens the right to own, weapons of mass destruction, then principally you're not allowing private citizens to have any rights at all. The fact is that anyone who has those weapons of mass destruction can come along and take those rights at any time. That is just the fact. That is the material fact of the matter. And wherever we fall on that continuum between the statement that you cannot own weapons of mass destruction and the actual application of the weapons of mass destruction in the taking of your rights is well, it's not irrelevant, but basically that's what we're talking about. Okay, it's just any moment the people who have those weapons can come along and take everything that you hold dear because, as I said before, in that situation, government is not based on law. Government is not based on words and contracts. Government is based on force. Might makes right. Okay, it's just like the big kid picking on the little kid. There's absolutely no difference, no philosophical difference in those two positions, okay? So if you don't believe that people should be able to own nuclear weapons, you believe in bullying. You believe that might makes right. And if you haven't figured that out, I'm not going to beat you over the head with it, but that's the truth. Okay, so The problem with America and guns is that America is defined by guns. So other countries, other societies, other civilizations, and other cultures have a culture. They have a history. They have different kinds of foods that they like, and traditions and things. We basically in America only have guns, and it hasn't always been this way. But I mean, go around and ask who of your friends even knows who John Philip Sousa is. Okay, who of your friends even knows who Stephen Foster is? Okay, who of your friends has read a William Faulkner book or Thomas Paine? Okay, these are American things, and we could go on, but there's no point because no one knows what I'm talking about. They're just they know how to whatever field strip an AR-15, right? Which is great, but they'd have no freaking clue what they're fighting for in America, and that's the problem. Okay, so I don't think that America is great because America has guns, because we're allowed to have guns. I think that every other country is, in the parlance of our times, cucked because they lack said guns. Okay, so every other country in the world is a cucked version of what it should be because of that lack of guns. And that's all there. We could go into great detail with each individual country to examine that. There's a fascinating history, with each single country, knowing how those guns were taken away. But that's for another video, perhaps. The fact is, I just want you to consider France, for example, with guns. Okay, consider France with guns. You have a baguette in one hand and an AR-15 in the other, right? And compare that to an American where he has a AR-15 in one hand and an AR-15 in the other. And you go and you say, to the Frenchman, you say, hey, after you're done shooting off that gun, you want to hang out and talk about baguettes, right? And he says, "Mais oui," right? But the American, all he can talk about is guns and maybe football, right? And I mean, excuse me, I'm sorry to the Americans who have a much broader palette regarding these kinds of things, but you definitely, I'm sure, can understand the point I'm making. Okay, culture, which we are not allowed to have in America, and I say allowed because this is a very top-down kind of thing. Okay, so before I get into that, my wife and I are moving, and I'll probably make a video about this, in more detail. But we are moving because of the vaccine mandate. Yeah, America has a vaccine mandate. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? Yeah, we're getting out of here because I don't want to put poison in my body. Both of us have lost our jobs. So if you'd like to support our channel, now would be a good time. And business, she says. Behind me, other side, that is, guess what that is in those UPS boxes, postal service boxes? That is $600 worth of G.I. Joes that I'm going to sell on eBay tomorrow because I'm going through and selling all of our worldly possessions, including our house, and we're moving to Mexico temporarily. But yes, as I said, more on that in a later video. When I told my boss that I was leaving the country, she said, no place is going to be safe. And while I definitely believe that that's true, to some extent, I really think it's funny that, I have her saying that on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm not a QAnon guy, but I follow a QAnon channel on Telegram, and the QAnon channel is always saying, if America falls, the world falls. You may have heard this if you subscribe to that same Telegram channel. So there's a word for that. There's a term for that mentality, and it is American exceptionalism. That is the belief that Americans have had engendered into them since, well, who knows, since the end of World War II. That's the idea that we are just special. We don't need to go to foreign countries. we don't need to study foreign languages or cultures. Hell, we don't even need to read, you know, and more as it's gone on, it's just we don't need these things because we have guns. I'm kind of making that connection that American exceptionalism essentially equates to the fact that we are able to own firearms, and I mean that's borne out in the Hegelian dialectic of the right versus left in America. The Republicans versus the Democrats, where the Republicans are nominally about individual rights and gun ownership, and then the left is about just taking that away and restoring us to some sort of just acultural, weird Star Trek future that they have planned for us. But anyway, so the idea is it. I mean, if COVID falls, what did I say? If America falls, the world falls. Is that true? Is that true? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it will be a terrible situation if the world falls. But I think that more and more, as we analyze this situation, we, are finally realizing that the target of the whole thing is America. The goal of this whole thing is to destroy this country, okay? This country that I am sitting in and recording this video right now. So we know about what's going on in Australia, okay? We know about what's going on in France, but look, you don't start. I mean, the way to get to Carnegie Hall, as they say, is practice, 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 right? So Australia is a trial run for what they're going to do here. France is a trial run for what they're going to do here. This is the big chimichanga, okay? And listen, yes, Australia had their guns taken away in the 90s. And that's a big reason that they're allowing that's going on there. But this is the thing about having guns, okay? And Dogg for Mayor is all about just pointing out the obvious. I feel in my videos, but look, when someone has a gun, you're not gonna just run straight at them, okay? And so we've said, people have said this, many times that China is not just going to invade us because there's however many guns, however many rednecks behind however many trees who are skilled in plinking off squirrels, So it doesn't make sense to invade us, and that's great. That's definitely great, but that doesn't mean that we're invincible, okay? It just means you have to take a different strategy. So, as I said, even if you have a gun, your opponent has a gun, you don't just run at your opponent while he's blamming you, okay? You take it and you take your gun around to his side where he can't see you, and then you shoot him. This is just what you do, even if you have a gun, okay? Even if, or you have a nuke and he has a nuke. This is just stupid, and I mean, again. So, what they have done to us. This is why the current situation is the perfect way to defeat America, and this is what's so terrifying, okay? They have infiltrated every institution. They have infiltrated every branch of government. They have infiltrated every agency and every corporation in the United States. They have dumbed us down. They have destroyed our education system and made us incapable of thinking. And, shoot, this has gone on. This is germ warfare too. What, they've put into our water supply. They've destroyed our food. And we're basically all malnourished. And that is having a deleterious effect on our mental capacity. Completely forgetting about the jabby and whatever that is doing to people's brains, which I'm hearing terrifying reports of, right? But the biggest thing of all is they have isolated us, okay? And that is what you do. That is called, that's divide and conquer, right? And a refused flank, um, enfilade, right? This is just basic military tactics, and we've fallen for it, right? Um, we're all isolated. So all of these guns that Americans are so proud of, and rightfully so, I would argue, but all of these guns that we had, if they were all pointing in the same direction at our government, at the White House, that's where they ought to be. Well, among other places, that's where they ought to be pointed. But imagine you had just a militia, 100,000 strong, all in agreement about what would be done, what should be done. There would be no this lime wedges. There would be no lime wedges. And the reason that we're isolated, the way that we are isolated is by taking away our culture, as I mentioned before, okay? And taking away our culture is based on Christianity, so that's another point that I could go on and on about. But that's again, that's back to the thing of the Frenchman with a baguette and an AR-15. Okay, that is a bajillion times stronger than an American with an AR-15 and an AR-15, because there's going to be however many Frenchmen who also have a baguette and an AR-15, and behind them there's going to be all these French women who say, "I love those baguettes," and thank God he's there on the front lines with his AR-15. I'm going to be baking him some baguettes. You're right. So I hope that makes sense. I know to an American it probably doesn't, because we are so deprived of culture. Like we believe that culture equals Netflix. That's how sad we are. Okay, I mean we think that culture begins with the British invasion. Like the Beatles. That's what we think American culture kind of starts with. And I mean, talk to people. Don't take my word for it. Go out and say, hey, when do you think American culture started, right? Or just not even American culture, but just culture. I mean, I've been studying this for years. I've been asking people these questions. It's bonkers. It's nuts, especially when you've studied jazz music. When you live in a city like New Orleans. So, but here we are in America on the verge of a civil war. This is what's going to happen. Okay, we're going to have a civil war, and the jabby, the lime wedge, is merely the the tipping point here, right? It's bizarre. It's bizarre that this has been politicized. It's bizarre the concept of a virus being politicized, a pandemic only affecting Biden voters is nutso butso. And the most bizarre fact is that's going on. That's real, and fully, whichever percentage, I'd say 35% of the population that gets all the percent of the population that gets all the media play, the airplay, can't figure that out for the life of them after 18 months. They can't friggin' figure it out that the only people who are dying are the liberals. It's nuts, okay? But so thank God liberals don't believe in guns, right? Because based on that premise, it'd be a very short civil war. But that's not that's not the way it's going to happen, okay? Obviously, it's not going to be direct, okay? It's not going to be gun versus gun. It's guns, which are good, versus information, okay, and fake viruses, which is what is going on, okay. And so you guys out there that I love, the conservatives and the libertarians, you can't shoot a virus, much less a fake virus. For Pete's sake, okay. So just, I wish I'd figured this stuff out a while ago, but as I said, I am leaving the country after having figured it out. So yeah, we're America, and I'm still gonna keep making videos. I still support the cause here, and I do understand that it is an existential cause. It's not just going to happen in America. right? Mexico is not going to be saved, or Japan is not going to be just totally left out of it. It is really a great reset. I understand all these things, believe me, to the extent possible. But yeah, at the end of the day, one side has guns, and the other doesn't believe anyone should have guns. So that makes my head hurt thinking about it. How are they going to get those guns taken away, right? How are you going to take the guns away without guns? It's like the last gun. This is going to be the last gun. Okay, we're going to make one more gun, and we're going to use that gun to take all the other guns and turn them into paper clips, and then that'll be it. Okay, that'll be it. All right, because then we'll figure it out. Then we'll just sit at home watching Netflix and planting trees, and yeah. Anyway, to Americans, again, I salute y'all. Keep the keep your target practice going, but please, study some strategy and study your own history, your own culture. Don't let it go the way that I think it's gonna go. Thanks for listening. This has been Evan Benton of Dogg for Mayor. Support the channel if you can. We're hurting. Can't live on GI Joes alone. But again, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.